Hi, my name is Max Broby, and I am broadcasting to you from the very small and quarantined town of Agawam, Massachusetts. So, today I will be teaching you guys about the importance of sports psychology when it comes to children, along with outlining various specific reasons why sports psychology should be implemented more in the training of child athletes. So, in my first objective out of the two, I will explain why children's sports psychology is important and it shouldn't be overlooked. So, most people that have heard of sports psychology instantly equate it with professional athletes, adult athletes, who are utilizing sports psychology more and more nowadays, not so much child athletes. However, there are still plenty of benefits to be had from implementing sports psychology into young athletes' lives, especially considering how many children all over the world are participating in sports. Child athletes, unlike adult athlete counterparts, haven't yet gained a large amount of athletic experience when it comes to overcoming various stressors that go along with being an athlete. As such, it is very important that child athletes get the correct guidance and advice from sports psychologists when it comes to both improving their athletic performance at a young age and also getting help overcoming mental challenges that go along with participating in competitive sports. So one such obstacle that is faced by children when just getting into competitive sports is dealing with kind of a particular type of fear that might be impacting their performance. So examples of this could include a young gymnast or dancer that is trying to complete a difficult move, or even a soccer player recovering from a missed shot on a goal. So sports psychologists can help young athletes overcome these mental blocks and challenges, such as fear, by training them to use different strategies. So some of these strategies could include reducing arousal by doing certain muscle relaxing exercises, setting realistic goals and not ones that are unattainable for the athlete, and staying focused even in the face of frustrations. In this way, sports psychologists can become a resource to young athletes as they prepare and grow for competitions. In the second objective, I kind of want to point out various reasons why sports psychology should be implemented into child athletics. So firstly, there are a great many children involved in sports in the U.S. alone, 45 million of them to be exact. This number is ever increasing, which tells us that children are more intensely involved in youth sports, which makes sense considering our country is fairly involved in sports and it's very ingrained in our culture. So according to statistical studies that have been done, participation in youth sports generally peaks at around the age of 12. This age also just so happens to be a critical development in adolescence life. So as such, it is crucial that child athletes get the proper guidance and support at this age. So another factor that needs to be considered is that while sports have been shown to be beneficial both physiologically and mentally to the development of the children, it isn't just kind of the act of being involved in organized sport that is automatically beneficial. So, in order for a certain sport to be beneficial to a child athlete, it is necessary for qualified, competent adults to kind of help guide and support them. So sports psychologists are trained to properly guide individuals through kind of difficult barriers and difficult things that might be found in sports and that athletes might be facing. So by utilizing them, child athletes can get all the many benefits that come along with being involved in competitive sports, and it kind of could help them overcome different challenges and barriers that they might be facing. So personally for me, I started playing football at around the age of 13. So this is kind of obviously a bit late compared to many of other people, especially compared to the friends that I had around the time who began playing as early as 7 or 8 years old. I recall that the moment I started playing sports a lot, it changed me as far as kind of like my mentality and my outlook on life. So I had a lot of very good coaches that supported me and helped me get into the sport and overcome various obstacles. However, due to the fact that our team was very large, it was difficult, kind of hard for all of the coaches that we had to address every single person's psychological needs. So that being said, I played football up to I think around my junior year, and I definitely feel as though sports psychologists would have been very beneficial, especially in my earlier years, especially when it came to overcoming various kind of stresses of a game, especially leading up to games. There's a lot of stress that goes into it. And in dealing with kind of making mistakes during the game, and maybe even just the fact that we lose games sometimes. And when you lose a game, it's very difficult for a child initially to overcome that. And so most of the things that I did learn, I had to learn on my own over time. So learning at a young age from someone that has actually trained in this field would have been very helpful in my opinion. So Ultimately, sports psychologists can become a very important asset if utilized in kind of the ever-growing youth athletics in our country. So sports psychologists can help younger athletes and kind of guide them as they become more increasingly involved in sports, whatever sport they might be involved in, and as they go through the various stages of their development.
Hi everyone, my name is Rachel Larkin and I'm broadcasting here from Woodbury, Connecticut. And for anyone that's familiar with Connecticut, Woodbury is just 10 miles west of Waterbury, which is one of the major cities we have here in Connecticut. So I'm going to be talking about children's participation in sports as in terms of sports psychology. So when researching this topic, I was thinking about my childhood, especially while being back here in Woodbury. And at an early age, I started playing, my parents put me in any sport I really wanted to play. So I remember at 5 years old, I was playing soccer, basketball, lacrosse, swimming, horseback riding, pretty much anything that we had here in my town, I was participating in. And when researching the reasons for why parents involve their children in sports at a young age, many of the main reasons were for their child to have fun, improve their skills, get exercise, be with their friends and make new friends, or to compete. And when thinking about this, I feel that was the main reasons why my parents involved me in sports. And also, children and adults have very different reasons for playing sports. When you think about adults and why they play sports, such as like my age and up, the main reason for that is to compete. And usually when you get to that level, you're pretty good at what you do. And when you're younger, you're playing just to have fun and improve your skills and see if this is the sport that you really like doing. So the peak participation age for children playing sports is 10 to 13. So that makes sense because that's around 5th grade, I would say. And around that age is when you're seeing if these skills you have are for whatever sport you're playing at the time, and you're starting to get a feel for what you like and you can make your own decisions. So then we think about why children discontinue playing sports. So like I said, the peak participation age for children is 10 to 13, and I was researching and found that for every 10 children who begin playing in a sports season, 3 to 4 quit before the next season. So many of the reasons for why these children could be not involving themselves in the sport anymore tend to be loss of interest, and that's the main reason for why children discontinue playing sports. And when I was thinking about this, I reflected, and the two sports I continued to play throughout high school were soccer and track and field. And the reasons why I stopped playing sports like basketball or softball growing up was because I wasn't interested in it and I didn't really like it as much. So I think this really holds true for being the main reason why children discontinue sports, but other reasons are they don't really have the skills for it, they're bored, or they don't like failure, or there's too much pressure on them. So when thinking about this, pressure is a really big aspect as far as sports psychology. We think about stress and anxiety, and for children to have this stress and pressure from their parents at a young age to either do really well, and maybe they don't even like playing the sport, but they're feeling this pressure from their parents, is just very negative. And although when researching it, I found that this was a very small amount of children who discontinue playing sports due to this negative pressure or anxiety. The main reason, like I said, was loss of interest. But it is sad to see that that still occurs, and that could be a reasoning why a child wants to stop playing a sport, because they're receiving this negative pressure and anxiety from their parents or fellow teammates or coaches, which is not that great. Other aspects are perceived competence, and what this means is children in low have low perceptions of their athletic abilities drop out and do not participate in sports, and children with high perceptions of their competence participate and persist. So what this really means is that why a child might drop out of their sport is they may think that their abilities aren't like the rest of their teammates and they decide they don't want to do it anymore. And that just has to go with like what are the main reasons why they're dropping out of sports. So, all right, it was great to see you guys, and I'll talk to you soon.
So the next topic that we're going to focus on is on the stress and burnout in competitive sports. So to understand what exactly the term burnout means, it is described as the state of both physical and psychological exhaustion that can result from excessive stress and the lack of satisfaction with performance. An example of burnout could be the feeling of being overwhelmed and tired from practice that you have trouble finding energy to do things. Athletes who experience burnout may go through a variety of psychological, physiological, and social changes, including decreased sport and/or school performance, lack of enthusiasm or ambition, and personality and mood change. When it comes to stress and burnout in children's competitive sports, children are at risk of heightened state anxiety, which can exhibit certain personal characteristics. Some of these characteristics are high trait anxiety, low self-esteem, low performance expectancy, low self-performance, frequent worries about failure, and frequent worries about adult expectations. During a 2017 interview from NBC with Simone Biles, she states, "It's both exciting but scary because I don't want them to be completely dependent on me for the sport to continue, because I tend to lose the excitement of gymnastics." When athletes feel this way, they tend to experience lower level of motivation and are more likely to burn out. All of these burnouts can be caused by authority figures like parents and coaches through their behaviors. When it comes to the pressure from their parents and their performance, athletes face a lot of burnout. The frustration and disappointment from the sport can cause the physical demand of the sport, which is another contribution to burnout. Athletes tend to spend a considerable amount of time with their coaches, and this can cause a contribution to their burnout. When it comes to coaches, they possess a goal-oriented and dominant approach to coaching. For some coaches, how the players get to the successful end result is not important, which explains why coaches have direct linear approach to coaching and decision.